The sun had just dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the small village nestled in the hills of Galilee. I sat by the window of my modest home, watching as the last light of day painted the sky in hues of pink and orange. My name is Miriam, a weaver by trade, and tonight, like many nights, I found myself lost in thought, pondering the day's events and the stories whispered through the grapevines of our community. As I prepared for bed, my mind wandered to the tales of Jesus, the carpenter's son from Nazareth, whose words had begun to echo through the valleys and over the hills. His teachings were unlike any other, filled with parables that stirred the heart and mind, urging us to look beyond our daily struggles and see the divine in the mundane. Tonight, however, my thoughts were particularly heavy. Earlier in the day, I had witnessed something extraordinary. A man, known for his harshness and greed, had approached Jesus, his face etched with desperation. He asked, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" The crowd hushed, all eyes on Jesus, waiting for wisdom that could change the course of a life. Jesus looked at him with eyes that seemed to see right through to his soul. "Why do you call me good?" he asked, his voice gentle yet piercing. "No one is good except God alone. You know the commandments. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony. You shall not defraud. Honor your father and mother." The man, his face now a mask of conflict, replied, "Teacher, all these I have kept since I was a boy." A silence fell, thick with anticipation. Jesus then said something that made the crowd gasp. "One thing you lack. Go, sell everything you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me." The man's expression turned from hopeful to troubled, his eyes darting to the ground. He walked away, his shoulders slumped, unable to part with his wealth. As I lay in bed, the scene replayed in my mind. What was it about Jesus' words that could move a man to such introspection? Could it be that the path to true motivation, to a life of purpose, lay not in accumulating but in letting go? This question lingered as I drifted into sleep, the soft sounds of the night enveloping me, my heart yearning for the dawn, not just of a new day, but of understanding. What would it mean to truly follow Jesus' teachings? And what could such a path offer to someone like me, a simple weaver with dreams larger than my loom? In the quiet of the night, my dreams were filled with visions of Jesus' words, their weight pressing upon my heart. I awoke before dawn, the first light barely touching the sky, and felt an urge to seek out others who might share in this newfound curiosity. I wrapped my shawl around me and stepped out into the cool morning air. The village still asleep. My feet carried me to the well where the women often gathered. There, I found Leah, a friend and fellow weaver, drawing water. Her face lit up with a knowing smile as she saw me approach. "Miriam, you look like you've seen a vision," she said, her voice low to not disturb the morning peace. I nodded, the encounter from yesterday still vivid in my mind. "Leah, have you heard of the man who spoke with Jesus, the one who couldn't let go of his wealth?" Leah's eyes widened. "Yes, I've heard whispers. It's a tale that's stirring many hearts, including mine." "But what of it, Miriam? Why does it trouble you so?" I took a deep breath, the cool air filling my lungs. "It's not just about wealth, Leah. It's about what we hold on to, what we value." Jesus' words, they challenge us to look beyond our possessions, to find purpose in giving rather than taking. Leah paused, her bucket now full, and sat beside me on the stone edge of the well. "You think there's more to life than what we've known?" "I do," I replied, my voice firm with conviction. "And I believe Jesus might show us how to find it." His teachings, they're not just for the rich or the poor, but for all of us. They're about motivation, about finding the strength to change, to be better. We sat in silence for a moment, the gravity of our conversation settling around us like the morning mist. Leah finally spoke, her tone thoughtful. "Perhaps we should go and listen to him ourselves. Maybe there's a lesson in his words for us, too, something to guide our daily lives." The idea sparked a flame within me. "Yes, let's do that. Let's hear him speak. Maybe we'll find what we've been missing, a purpose that transcends our daily toils." As we made our way back to our homes, the village began to stir. The day's work would soon begin, but today there was an undercurrent of something more, a subtle shift in the air. The story of the rich man had planted seeds of introspection, and now the prospect of hearing Jesus directly was like water to those seeds, promising growth and change. I returned to my loom, but my hands moved with a new purpose, weaving not just cloth, but thoughts of what could be. The loom's rhythmic clatter was now a backdrop to my contemplation. What would Jesus say to someone like me? Could his teachings truly offer a path to a more meaningful life, one where my dreams could flourish beyond the confines of my small home? The day stretched on, and with each thread I wove, my resolve grew. The encounter at the well with Leah had ignited a desire to seek out Jesus, to listen, and perhaps to learn how to let go of what held me back. The anticipation of this meeting was like a beacon, guiding me through the mundane towards something greater, something divine. As the afternoon sun began to cast long shadows across the village, I found myself restless at my loom. The threads seemed to blur together, my mind far from the patterns I was supposed to be weaving. Instead, my thoughts were consumed with the idea of seeking out Jesus. I knew he often spoke in the marketplace, where people from all walks of life gathered to hear his words. I decided it was time to act on my curiosity. I left my loom, my heart pounding with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Leah had agreed to join me, and together we made our way through the winding paths of our village, the air thick with the scent of baking bread and the sounds of daily life. Upon reaching the marketplace, we found a crowd already gathered, their faces turned towards a figure standing on a makeshift platform. Jesus was there, his presence commanding yet serene, his eyes scanning the crowd with a warmth that seemed to touch each soul. His voice, when he spoke, was like a gentle stream, soothing yet powerful. Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow, they neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Jesus began, his words weaving through the crowd like a melody. Leah and I exchanged a glance, the simplicity of his message resonating deeply within us. Here was a man teaching us to find peace in simplicity, to trust in the providence of God rather than in our own efforts. As he continued, Jesus spoke of the kingdom of heaven, likening it to a mustard seed, the smallest of all seeds, yet when it grows, it becomes the largest of garden plants. So shall the kingdom of God be, he said. From the smallest acts of faith and kindness, great things can grow. His parables were not just stories, they were invitations to see the world differently, to find motivation in the everyday, in the overlooked, in the seemingly insignificant. However, as we listened, a murmur began to ripple through the crowd. A group of Pharisees, their robes distinct and their expressions stern, approached Jesus. One of them, a man named Eliab, known for his strict adherence to the law, stepped forward. "Teacher," Eliab began, his voice carrying a challenge, "we have heard your teachings, and they speak of a kingdom not of this world. But what of our laws, our traditions? Are we to abandon them for these new parables?" The crowd hushed, the tension palpable. Jesus turned to Eliab, his gaze steady and filled with compassion. "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen, will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished." Eliab's face softened slightly, the crowd murmuring in contemplation. Jesus continued, "The greatest among you will be your servant. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. The words struck a chord within me. Here was the challenge: to serve, to humble oneself, to find motivation not in rising above others, but in lifting them up. Leah squeezed my hand, her eyes wide with understanding. The Pharisees left, their questions answered, yet their hearts perhaps still wrestling with the implications. Jesus turned back to the crowd, his eyes meeting mine for a fleeting moment. In that look, I felt seen, understood, and challenged. As the crowd began to disperse, Leah and I lingered, the weight of Jesus' words settling over us like a mantle. "Miriam," Leah whispered, "his teachings, they're not just about giving up wealth. It's about giving up our pride, our self-centeredness." I nodded, the realization dawning. Yes, and it's about finding motivation in serving others, in living a life that reflects the kingdom he speaks of. It's about transformation, not just of our actions, but of our hearts. The sun was setting now, casting a golden hue over the marketplace. Leah and I walked back home, our steps slow, our minds full. The path ahead seemed daunting, filled with the challenge of letting go of old ways, of embracing a life of service and humility. Yet there was a spark of hope, a burgeoning motivation to live out these teachings, to weave them into the fabric of our daily lives. As night fell, I returned to my loom, the threads now clearer in my mind. Each weave was a step towards understanding, towards embodying the lessons of Jesus. The loom's clatter was now a rhythm of purpose, each thread a promise of change, of growth, of a life motivated by something far greater than myself. The loom's rhythmic clatter had always been a source of comfort, a constant in my life that now felt like a metaphor for the steady, unyielding path Jesus spoke of. As I worked, my thoughts were not on the fabric, but on the fabric of my life, how it could be rewoven with threads of service and humility. The next morning, the village was abuzz with the news of a gathering at the edge of town. Jesus was to speak again, and this time it was said he would address the very essence of motivation, the kind that comes from within, from a place of faith and love. Leah and I, driven by an insatiable curiosity and a newfound sense of purpose, decided to attend. The path to the gathering place was lined with people, their faces a mix of anticipation and skepticism. We found a spot near the front, close enough to see the earnestness in Jesus' eyes as he began to speak. Many of you seek motivation in wealth, in power, in the accolades of men. Jesus started, his voice carrying over the crowd with an authority that was gentle yet firm. But I tell you, true motivation comes from serving others, from the joy of giving, from the peace of knowing you are part of something greater. His words resonated with a truth that felt both ancient and new. He told a story of a widow who gave her last 2 coins to the temple treasury, not because she had much, but because she gave all she had. This poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in everything, all she had to live on. The crowd murmured, some in agreement, others in disbelief. I felt a tug at my heart, a call to reassess what I valued, what truly motivated me. Leah's eyes were fixed on Jesus, her expression one of deep contemplation. Then Jesus posed a question that seemed directed at each of us. What is it that you treasure most? Is it the fleeting riches of this world, or the eternal wealth of the Spirit? The air was thick with introspection. I thought of my loom, my home, my simple life. What if the motivation to live wasn't about acquiring more, but about giving more of myself? Could I, like the widow, give not from my excess, but from my essence? As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows, Jesus shared another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he found one of great value, he went away and sold everything he had and bought it. This parable struck a chord. The pearl was not just any treasure. It was one that required everything in exchange. Could the pearl be the life Jesus spoke of, one of service, humility, and divine connection? Leah leaned close, her voice barely above a whisper. Miriam, do you think we've been looking for pearls in the wrong places? I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. Perhaps we have. Maybe the true pearl is right here, in the teachings of Jesus, in the way we live our lives. The crowd began to disperse, but a few lingered, their faces etched with the struggle of internal conflict. Among them was a man named Ezra, a local merchant known for his shrewd dealings. His face was troubled, his usual confidence replaced by a look of deep concern. "Teacher," Ezra called out, his voice breaking through the murmurs. "I have wealth, but I feel empty. How can I find this pearl you speak of?" Jesus approached him, his eyes filled with a compassion that seemed to envelop Ezra. "Sell your possessions, give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me." Ezra's face fell, much like the rich man from the previous day. The crowd watched, holding their breath. Would he walk away, or would he embrace this radical change? The moment stretched, filled with the potential for transformation. Ezra's eyes scanned the crowd, perhaps looking for a sign, for courage. Then, with a resolve that seemed to come from a place deeper than his wealth, he nodded slowly. "I will do it," he said, his voice firm. "I will sell my goods, give to the poor, and follow you." A gasp went through the crowd, a mix of admiration and disbelief. Jesus smiled, a smile that seemed to light up the very air around him. "Your heart has chosen wisely, Ezra. The kingdom of heaven is within your reach." As the crowd's murmurs turned into a reverent silence, I felt a surge of emotion. Ezra's decision was not just his own, it was a beacon for all of us, a testament to the transformative power of Jesus' teachings. Leah and I exchanged a glance, our eyes reflecting the same resolve that had just been ignited in Ezra. The sun was now high, its light piercing through the crowd, illuminating Jesus as he continued to speak. "The path I offer is narrow, and the gate is small, but it leads to life," he said, his voice resonating with a profound promise, "and those who find it are few." His words were like seeds planted in fertile soil, ready to sprout into action. I felt an overwhelming urge to act, to live out these teachings not just in thought, but in deed. Leah, sensing my resolve, whispered, "Miriam, this is our moment. We must not let it pass." I nodded, my heart beating with a purpose I had never known. "Yes, let's start now. Let's live as Jesus teaches, with every thread we weave, with every word we speak." As the gathering began to disperse, I noticed a woman, her face lined with worry, approach Jesus. She was known in our village as Rachel, a widow with little to her name. Her hands were empty, but her eyes were full of hope. "Teacher," she said, her voice trembling, "I have nothing to give, but I want to follow your path. How can I when I have so little?" Jesus took her hands in his touch gentle. "Rachel, your heart is rich in faith. Give what you can, not from your abundance, but from your heart. Serve, love, and trust in the kingdom that is not of this world." Tears welled in Rachel's eyes, not of sorrow, but of relief and newfound strength. She nodded, her resolve firm. "I will, teacher, I will serve with all that I am." The scene was a profound illustration of what Jesus meant by true wealth. It wasn't about what we could give materially, but what we could offer spiritually, emotionally, and with our actions. Leah and I, inspired by Rachel's courage, decided to start our journey of service right there. We approached a group of children playing near the edge of the crowd, their laughter a stark contrast to the solemnity of the moment. "Would you like to hear a story?" I asked, kneeling down to their level. Their eyes lit up, and they gathered around us, eager for the tale. I began to weave a story, not with threads, but with words, telling them of the Good Samaritan, of kindness and service beyond boundaries. Leah joined in, her voice adding depth to the narrative, making it come alive. The children listened, their faces reflecting the wonder and the moral of the story. As we finished, one of the children, a little boy named Caleb, tugged at my sleeve. "Can I help someone like that?" he asked, his eyes wide with innocence and a desire to do good. "Yes, Caleb," I replied, my heart swelling with hope. "You can start right now. Help your friends, share your toys, be kind. That's how you begin." Leah and I watched as the children dispersed, their play now imbued with a new purpose, a reflection of the lessons they had just heard. The day was drawing to a close, the sun setting over Galilee, painting the sky in hues of fire and gold. Leah and I walked back towards our homes, our steps light, our spirits lifted. "We've started something today, Miriam," Leah said, her voice filled with a quiet joy. "Something that will grow like the mustard seed Jesus spoke of." I smiled, feeling the truth of her words. Yes, and it's not just about giving up our possessions. It's about giving up our old selves, our old ways of thinking. It's about finding motivation in the divine, in serving others, in living a life that echoes Jesus' teachings. As we parted ways, I returned to my loom, but this time, every thread I wove was a prayer, a promise, a step towards the life Jesus envisioned for us. The loom's clatter was now a symphony of purpose, each sound a note in the melody of transformation. That night, as I lay in bed, the events of the day replayed in my mind. Ezra's decision, Rachel's faith, the children's eager hearts, all were signs of the change that was taking root in our village. The teachings of Jesus had not just stirred the waters, they had set in motion a tide of transformation. As I lay there, the gentle night breeze whispering through the open window, I felt a profound peace settle over me. The loom, once just a tool for my trade, had become a symbol of my journey towards a life of greater meaning. Each thread I wove was now imbued with the lessons of humility, service, and faith that Jesus had imparted. The next morning, I rose with the dawn, the sky a canvas of soft blues and pinks. Today, I felt different, as if the very air I breathed was charged with purpose. I made my way to the marketplace, where I knew Jesus would be speaking again. The village was alive with anticipation, the stories of yesterday's gathering having spread like wildfire. Upon arriving, I found the crowd larger than before, a testament to the impact of Jesus' words. Leah was already there, her face alight with the same fervor that burned within me. We stood together, waiting for Jesus to begin. "Friends," Jesus started, his voice clear and resonant, "the kingdom of heaven is not a place far removed from us. It is here, within us, waiting to be realized through our actions, our love, and our service to one another." His gaze swept over us, and I felt as if he was speaking directly to my heart. "Do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about what you will wear. Life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.